2.
Quinnipiac basketball is back on the map. How deep can the men's and women's teams go? The Bobcats hockey teams are heading into their stretch runs of conference play before tournament season and see our rankings of the top 5 winter athletes. All that and more, Bobcat Breakdown starts now. Welcome into Bobcat Breakdown. I'm your host, Tom Krasnowski, and joining me as analysts this week are Kyle Levasseur and Ryan Chichester. Gentlemen, are we ready to talk some sports tonight?
Tom, it's good to see you after a long winter break. I'm really glad to be back on the desk with my man, Ryan Chichester.
Yeah, good to be here. I guess I'm as ready as I'm going to be, so let's just go.
All right, well, let's dive into our first topic, the Quinnipiac men's basketball team. Guys, this team has defied expectations this season and is currently 5th in the MAC, despite playing a lot of close games. Ryan, let's start with you. Is this team legit?
Well, I mean, that's a really hard question. They've won 3 in a row, but they're last in the MAC in field goal percentage. They're last in the MAC in field goal percentage allowed. They're in the bottom half of every statistical category in conference except offensive rebounding where they're 5th. So are they just getting a lot of close wins? They've had 9 decided by 2 or less. So I think a lot of it is that they might have had some good fortune on their hands so far. In the next 4 games when they play the 4 teams that are ahead of them in the standings, I think they might get a little bit of a reality check. But it's still been a great story.
So my question to you, Ryan, is if you're winning all these games, is it always good luck then, even if they're close? Because at the end of the day, for me, it all has to do with the W. I could care less how they're getting it done as long as they're getting the win, and you are what your record says you are. For me, the question is if they're legit. I think they have the building blocks for a season or 2 from now to really become legit. I don't think they're at that level yet that they're one of the most elite teams in the conference, but they have the building blocks. First, they have great coaching in Baker Dunleavy. He's done a tremendous job turning this program around. The expectations for this team were them to finish last in the MAC, and they're 5th right now. They also need a superstar, which they have in Cam Young. Any great team has that guy that you can dish the rock to take over a game, and Cam Young has done that so far. He's 5th in the MAC in scoring, and he's their go-to guy. And then finally, you need some depth, which I really think they have. I really love what this team has coming off the bench with Jacob Rigoni, who is one of the best 3-point shooters in the conference. And then you have the Robinson brothers, who play great defense and also can hit a 3. The 3-pointer, it's just such a big play for really boosting morale and getting the energy up on the team. I think it's so important. And then you also have depth with Chase Daniels. He's becoming a less selfish player. He's done a great job really passing the ball lately. And Isaiah Washington and Rich Kelly can really supply the offense for this team when they really need it.
Well, you asked me if they're legit, and you just said they're building blocks to becoming legit, so they're not legit yet. They have a good record, 6-4 in the conference, but again, the tough test is still ahead of them. The next 4 games, ask me in 4 games, and then I can give you a more definitive answer. Right now, they're a good story. Baker Dunleavy should definitely be a candidate for Coach of the Year in the MAC, but still, they have their hardest tests ahead of them, and they're not ones I think they're going to pass with flying colors.
Yeah, Ryan, I agree with you, but the Bobcats, they are making every game still a nail-biter at this point. What do they need going forward in MAC play?
Well, they need some consistency. Like we said, we mentioned all the stats where they're towards the bottom of the conference. Kyle mentioned Cam Young. His 17.5 points per game is definitely encouraging, but his field goal percentage is also not the best. He gets a lot of his points at the free throw line. He's attempted just under 160 free throws. That's by far most in the MAC. So a lot of times, Cam Young basically epitomizes what the Bobcats are right now. A team that's maybe inferior to a lot of other MAC teams, but they are able to grind it out. Cam Young's not very flashy in the way he scores all the time. He's tough, gets to the free throw line.
If he's not flashy, if he's always at the free throw line, why does it matter if he's still producing?
Well, because sometimes you need a score from the field to get into a little bit of an offensive rhythm. You look at the Bobcats' field goal percentage as a team; they don't get into a rhythm a lot. They're 6-4. They're under 500 overall. They need some consistency if they're going to beat teams like Niagara, Canisius, or whoever else they face that can score in bunches, which the Bobcats sometimes struggle to do.
That's a good point about scoring in bunches because they really need a flow sometimes when they're out there. What I look at, and you mentioned the free throws for Cam Young, as a team, Quinnipiac's free throw percentage is really been their, they feast on it or they famine on the free throws. Here's a stat that I found crazy. The 80% mark, Ryan, is really the mark they need to be over if they want to start winning games. They're 6-1 when they shoot over 80% from the charity stripe, and they're only 3-12 when they shoot under 80% at the free throw line. I mean, I think that tells it all. Whether Cam Young is really getting to the free throw line all the time, they need to start hitting them as a team.
Well, it's a telling statistic, but I think it also just has to do with the timing of those free throws. There are times when they do shoot under 80% and they're still in a position to win. It's just that those free throws that they miss just happen to come at the worst possible times. During this winning streak, they've turned that around to their credit. You saw Jacob Rigoni hit 4 clutch free throws to seal the Marist win. So, it really comes on timing. Are they going to hit their free throws in crunch time? Because that's what's going to determine a win and a loss.
All right, well, it remains to be seen if Quinnipiac can fill those gaps or if they can ride their current team into the MAC playoffs. Keeping on the hardwood, let's talk about the women's basketball team, the hottest team on campus. Gentlemen, this team is currently on a 12-game win streak and is showing no signs of slowing down. Your question is this: do they lose again in the regular season? Kyle, you're up.
Is that a trick question, Tom? I don't know. I mean, this women's basketball team is legit. This is one of the best teams I've seen on Quinnipiac's campus in my 3 years here. I think there might be one game that they have a bit of a trip up, and that is when they go to Marist. They already beat Marist earlier in the year, but it was their closest MAC game by far, where they won 62-56. They've been blowing out every other team, winning by an average of nearly 20 points per game. I think the real question is, Tom, how far can this team go come playoff time? Is the Sweet 16 going to become, an every year occurrence for them? Because that's what they're showing right now in conference play. And I think they're out of conference play. I know it's been a bit of a hot topic here on Bobcat Breakdown, but I really think their out of conference game has prepared them well come playoff time. They beat teams like Central Michigan and Dayton, both of which are undefeated in their conference. Central Michigan at 16-3, Dayton at 16-4. And I think those wins and the tough losses that they had against Ohio State and Mizzou earlier on in the year are really going to prepare them and teach them what they need to come playoff time.
Look, they've scored the most points in the MAC. They've given up the fewest points in the MAC. They've won 12 games in a row. The question shouldn't be, are they going to lose again? It should be, are they going to ever win by just single digits? This team blows everybody out, like you mentioned. Our insider, Josh Silverman, tweeted a couple days ago, the average margin of victory has been 19.5 points. The only thing that would have me slightly nervous about not winning the rest of the way is maybe they get caught up in a close game and they just don't know what to do with themselves because they're so busy just beating the crap out of everybody they play. This team is a well-oiled machine. They're going back to the NCAA tournament. And what's amazing? You mentioned the out-of-conference schedule. If somehow they were to slip up maybe deep in the MAC tournament, you could make a case that they can still get an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament just because of how strong their resume is.
I mean, we could talk for days, Ryan, about how good they are statistically and everything, but just from the eye test, this is a historically great Quinnipiac team that needs to be kept an eye on, and just fans need to appreciate how good they are while they are.
All right, well, with 7 games to go, all in the MAC, Quinnipiac has a chance to finish on a tear. One of their unquestioned team leaders, though, is junior Erin McClure. Ryan, we'll start with you. Is McClure the MAC Player of the Year?
Well, she might be the best one-on-one scorer in the MAC, and she's definitely a great defender. But if I have a vote, I would actually I'd stick with the Bobcats for Conference Player of the Year, obviously, but I would go with Jen Fay. She's shot 57 for 105 since MAC play started. That's 54%. She's also shot 48% from the three-point line. She's been a scoring machine. She leads the team in scoring now. She's top 10 in the conference in rebounds, field goals, three-point percentage. So, McClure is probably your best bet when you're looking for an isolation bucket, but Jen Fay has just been lights out from the field. She's my MVP.
So, Ryan, I got to ask you, why is it obvious that a player on the Bobcats has to be the Player of the Year? Because for me, I've got someone else. I got Rebecca Hand from the Marist Red Foxes. And when I look at it, when I am looking for my Player of the Year, or MVP, I'm looking for the person that brings the most value to their team. Obviously, the Bobcats are laden with some of the most talented players in the conference, if not, the entire NCAA. But I'm looking for someone that elevates their team from what might be an average team to what Marist is right now, 8-2, second best team in the MAC. and they would not be there without Rebecca Hand. And look, Erin McClure, she can do anything on the basketball court this season. She's added her 3 shots. She can post people up, play excellent defense. I don't think there's anything that she can't do. Jen Fay, that's another good pick. But when you look at it statistically as well, Rebecca Hand, she scores almost 4 points per game more than Jen Fay.
Well, it's not always in the points per game. You want to talk about value. Quinnipiac lost their leading scorer in Sarah Schuin, to a season-ending injury, and I just rattled off some insane numbers that Jen Fay's put up since Sarah Schuin went down. So then when they needed someone to take over the load on offense, Jen Fay has absolutely been there. And I just don't see how you pick a player of the year not on a team that's currently undefeated in the MAC and just destroying the competition.
Okay, so last year, though, not one Quinnipiac Bobcat made the MAC all-first team selection. And it's not like their numbers are that much better than last year's. So I don't see a jump from no one making the All-MAC team to someone suddenly becoming player of the year.
Well, because it always speaks to the balance of the team. Last year they didn't have one player in the top 10 in scoring, but they still led the conference in scoring. This year there's been some other circumstances like injuries to some of their top players. So when you have someone as valuable as Schuin and even Vanessa Doji go down, and then you see how Jen Fay's been playing and how she's been shooting the ball, that definitely puts you in the player of the year conversation, especially when it looks like they're going to waltz their way to another MAC title.
Oh, well, don't get me wrong. I thoroughly believe they're going to waltz their way to another MAC title, and they're by far the best team in the conference. But the way Tricia Fabry's teams are set up, it's not about one individual scorer. It's about a collective team that gets the W. They're not worried about those 3 letters in MVP. They're worried about that 1 letter, and that's the W.
I'm worried about 3 letters, F-A-Y. Jen Fay.
Well, there's some stiff competition for sure, both at Quinnipiac and around the conference, but McClure is certainly in the running for this prestigious awards. All right, we're going to take a quick break now, but stay tuned as we switch over to the ice to discuss the Quinnipiac men's and women's ice hockey teams. Don't go away. Bobcat Breakdown will be right back.
Hello, and tonight on Sandwich News, we will determine what makes a good sandwich and a bad sandwich. First, the standard sandwich. Uninspired, and frankly, a little gross. But we have here a Ray and Mike sandwich, the Cadillac of sandwiches. And if you want one, well,
come on down to Ray and Mike's at 3030 Whitney Ave, Hamden, Connecticut. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. QCash is accepted.
now that's a sandwich.
This is Sports Pause.
Are you concerned with the 0-2 start for this team?
Right here, top of the circle, again, rips it past the grassroots goalie.
What will breaking the record mean for the program himself? I mean, 138 wins.
There's the tough shot. What a nice play by Mikey Dixon.
He's good in transition. Just a really dynamic scorer he can create for himself.
And now, Emma, it's time for the top 5 plays of the week.
Coming up on #that, we talk about some fun events around Quinnipiac's campus.
And we talk about some weird news that's been discussed around Twitter.
All that and more, we are your source for Quinnipiac's entertainment news.
Welcome to the WQAQ Morning Show. Dan Ball and Emma Spagnolo joining you here from the QAQ studios in Hamden. And Emma, it is that time of year again.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. Tom Krasnowski alongside Kyle Levasseur and Ryan Chichester here to discuss the Quinnipiac women's ice hockey team. The Bobcats just wrapped up their final out-of-conference series of the year, getting swept at home by the University of New Hampshire. Fellas, are there any positives to take from this weekend?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, they were 4 for 4 on the penalty kill, and they came into this game 7th in the ECAC in penalty kills, so I guess that's a positive. I'm really picking at straws here, to be honest with you. I mean, they scored first in both games. They couldn't hold a lead. They took a 2-1 lead again in the first game, but just gave it right back. I guess the one positive you can take away, it really has nothing to do with them. They're very fortunate that St. Lawrence also lost both of their games this weekend, so at least they still have a chance to beat them later in the season and maybe clinch the tiebreaker because they're 3 points back of them right now. But again, I'm really picking at straws here.
Yeah, the only positive, Ryan, that I can take away from this is that this was an out-of-conference weekend for them. Getting swept is something that they can't afford. I mean, this is Quinnipiac hockey that we're talking about, men's or women's, and we'll get to men's in just a second with beat reporter MJ Baird up at the TD Bank Sports Center. But the Quinnipiac women's hockey team is not accustomed to getting swept and letting up 6 goals in a weekend. I mean, I guess if you want to take some moral victories away, Melissa Samiskevich scored 1 goal, but we know that she's going to consistently score for them. The power play was just inconsistent. There would be a couple shifts where they didn't have a shot at all. Then there'd be a shift that they'd have 6 shots but couldn't score. It was just a bad weekend for the Quinnipiac Bobcats.
Well, you guys both mentioned the ECAC standings, and Quinnipiac remains the 5th seed in ECAC hockey. Should they reach the top 4, they would earn a first-round bye in the ECAC hockey tournament. Kyle, you can go first. Do you think this team has what it takes to jump into the top 4 and earn that much-needed bye week?
Not to be disrespectful to Cass Turner's squad, but I don't think there is a chance that they get one of those 4 byes in the ECAC playoffs, and here's why. The 2 top teams in the conference are Clarkson and Colgate right now. They already have byes locked up from how high up they are in the standings and how many points they have. That would mean that Quinnipiac would have to surpass St. Lawrence and Cornell, both of which who have easier schedules and are 3 points ahead of Quinnipiac currently in the standings. When you look at Quinnipiac's upcoming schedule, they play Clarkson and St. Lawrence, both at home. Clarkson, probably one of the best teams in the country. St. Lawrence, at home, also one of a top 10 team in the country. When you look at the rest of Quinnipiac's schedule, 4 of their 6 games are on the road, where they are 4-10 away from the TD Bank Sports Center this year. So the road schedule also isn't too easy. It doesn't look like they're going to surpass Cornell and St. Lawrence, so it looks like they're going to have to play in the first round.
All right, good stuff, guys. Now let's shift over to the men's team. Fresh off their first game in 10 days, the Bobcats lost 5-3 to Princeton at home. Live from the Frank Perotti Jr. Arena at the TD Bank Sports Center, our beat reporter MJ Baird is on the scene. So MJ, Quinnipiac lost 5-3 tonight. They had an early lead and just could not hang on. What are your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, Tom, thank you. I mean, this game, it really was kind of inexplicable. I don't really know what to say after this game. It just wasn't the Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team of old. It wasn't the team you've seen last year, the year before that, the year before that. It's not the team that's going to win 20 games, I'll tell you that much. So here's just a couple quick takeaways. First, the Tigers were real fast tonight. The Bobcats had a lot of trouble, kind of counteracting that speed from Princeton, and it kind of led to Princeton's success, as you saw 5 goals, but of course, 1 being on the empty net rather. So really 4 pure goals for Princeton. But speaking of those goals, they all came on the power play. Tigers were 3 for 3 on the power play tonight. The Bobcats' penalty kill really not good tonight, kind of looking like Swiss cheese out there. But again, I think it was Princeton's speed that really made the difference. And another thing, Quinnipiac struggled on the power play, 0 for 2 tonight. Also with the goalie pulled, Quinnipiac, they had a couple quality chances, but really nothing fantastic. And to be quite honest with you, I just left the press conference with head coach Rand Pecknold, and here are a couple of his lines. Just listen to these. One of the most disappointing losses I've had in my time here at Quinnipiac, and I was embarrassed at how poorly coached we were tonight. And he doesn't necessarily mean exactly how he coached his team, but the coachability of his players, meaning they're just not buying into his system night in and night out, and it's not successful for the Bobcats.
MJ, Quinnipiac will only play ECAC hockey opponents from here on out. What do you think this game means, not only to the ECAC standings, but also to the playoff implications looking forward?
Yeah, Kyle, to be honest, the playoffs aren't looking good for this Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team. So here's just a kind of look at the rest of their games on the schedule, okay? They got 2 versus Clarkson and 2 versus St. Lawrence. That'll be 2 at home and 2 away. So if you chalk up the 2 Clarkson one as losses, because that's the best team in the conference right now, and the 2 ones against St. Lawrence as wins, those are going to cancel out. Quinnipiac's looking at 6-10-2 in the ECAC. But then they have 4 other games: Union, RPI, Brown, and Yale. Quinnipiac would need to win all 4 of those games just to be 10-10-2 in the conference and to meet that 500 mark. It's going to be tough for this Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team. This is a team that's consistently one of the best teams in college hockey. I mean, if you do the math, not including this year, but the 5 years before, Quinnipiac had the most wins in college hockey as a team over the course of that 5-year span. Again, that's not including this year. So it's just really a down year for this team.
So MJ, obviously this season hasn't gone according to plan. It's been marred in disappointment. Is the season even salvageable at this point?
Is it salvageable at this point? Well, I would say really no. I mean, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament via the pairwise rankings. That's evident. It's been evident for weeks now. But if they don't figure things out, this might just be a bad season overall. Like I said, they should end up with a minimum 6 conference wins if they get those 2 versus St. Lawrence. And then I'm saying, okay, maybe they split the 4 games between RPI, Union, Brown, and Yale. Okay, that's 8-12-2. I mean, I don't think that's a successful season. I wouldn't even say it's salvageable. And just to go back to what Rand Pecknold said after the game one more time, the buy-in is unacceptable, and this year we don't have the depth to sit those guys. So in past years, if someone's not buying in, Rand Pecknold's just not going to play them, and it's the next man up mentality. What is this, the New England Patriots? But no, they don't have that depth this year, and it's really cutting into their success. And then this one line, this is what caught me the most in the post-game press conference. Rand said, "We get into adversity and we panic." And in past years, that has been the complete opposite of this men's ice hockey team. They hit adversity and they thrive. And really, I think that's the bottom line. That's the issue. It's adversity and panic instead of adversity and success. Guys, that's all I have from the TD Bank Sports Center. Back to you at the desk.
Thank you very much, MJ. But now it's time for another break. Coming up, Sierra Goodwill will discuss her top 5 winter athletes at Quinnipiac. Stay tuned for more on Bobcat Breakdown.
Bobcat Breakdown, presented by the Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network.
We are your source for debate.
Did they make the playoffs last year, Tom Jenkins?
When it clicks, it clicks.
We dissect Quinnipiac athletics on a scale you've never seen before.
With Tobia, it almost looks like she's reaching a little bit.
Plus, we bring in the biggest names surrounding college sports.
We are live here at the Times Union Center with Jay Billis.
And of course, some comedy.
But you can only have so much arena food.
I think you're crazy.
Bobcat Breakdown.
Tuesdays at 9:30.
Coming up on #that, we talk about some fun events around Quinnipiac's campus.
And we talk about some weird news that's been discussed around Twitter.
All that and more, we are your source for Quinnipiac's entertainment news.
Tonight on Sandwich News, we will determine what makes a good sandwich and a bad sandwich. First, the standard sandwich. Uninspired and frankly, a little gross. But we have here a Ray and Mike sandwich, the Cadillac of sandwiches. And if you want one, well,
come on down to Ray and Mike's at 3030 Whitney Ave, Hamden, Connecticut. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. QCash is accepted.
Now that's a sandwich.
And welcome back once again into Studio 125. Alongside Kyle Lavasser and Ryan Chichester, I'm Tom Krasnowski. And guys, let's talk Game of the Week. We've already discussed how good the men's basketball team has been this year, and they've got a crucial game on Friday on the road at Iona, a game you can see nationally on ESPNU. Ryan, what are we looking for in this matchup?
Well, you're looking at the three-point line where Iona is the best three-point shooting team in the conference, being defended by a Quinnipiac team that's last in three-point defense. So Iona's going to dictate this game. If they come out hot from three, the Bobcats are going to be in trouble. If they come out a little cold, maybe the Bobcats can stay in it, but I do think Iona will take this one and the Bobcat streak will come to an end.
Yeah, Gales win big in this one. They're 6-1 at home. I think ESPN has them winning with like a 95% chance. I don't see the Bobcats winning this one.
Well, it should be a fun game for sure. With the Quinnipiac women's teams heading into their playoff season soon, our own Sierra Goodwill took some time to rank her top 5 winter athletes.
Thanks, Tom. Time to jump into my top 5 winter athletes of the year. As of about halfway through the conference season, let's jump into number 5, Jacob Rigoni from the Quinnipiac men's basketball team. He has earned his way into the starting lineup as of late, and a huge part of that is because of his 3-ball. He's shooting 51% from behind the arc, good enough for first place in the MAC and 15th in the country. Very impressive stat for the freshman from Australia. Now let's jump into number 4. Odine Tufto from the Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team. Now, it might be an up and down year for the hockey team in general, but Odine Tufto has been incredible. He leads the team in 27 points. 22 of those are assists. His hockey IQ is off the charts. He finds his teammates, knows where they need the puck. He has a plus-minus rating of +7, second best on the team. He's been incredible and is going to be a big bright spot for this team moving forward. And at number 3, we're going back to the men's basketball team, Cameron Young. Boy, has he grown from basically not playing at all last season to being the team's go-to guy this season. He averages over 17 points per game. He is so athletic. He can knock down the 3, he can drive to the cup, and he has a mid-range game, such a creative shooter, and he is the huge reason why this team is 6-4 in conference, its best start in the MAC since the 2013-14 season. Now to number 2, from the Quinnipiac women's basketball team, which has been dominant as ever this year, Erin McClure. She was the MAP preseason player of the year, and she has not let anyone down there. She averages about 11.3 points per game. She's on the floor just under 30 minutes per game, which is a lot in Trisha Fabry's rotation. She draws so much attention from the opposing team's defense because of her athleticism and ability to score from anywhere on the floor. She's a huge reason why this team is yet again probably going to win out in the MAC. And at number 1, her teammate Jen Fay. Jen Fay blossomed in the NCAA tournament last year, and she has not slowed down since then. She averages 12.2 points per game, most on the team, 7 rebounds per game. And if Quinnipiac needs a bucket, they're going to Jen Fay. She's 40% from behind the arc, has that killer mentality, so much passion from her every time she steps out on the floor. And if Quinnipiac wants to make another NCAA tournament run, it's going to be Jen Fay leading the charge. That's my top 5 winner athletes. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you, Sierra. Now it's time to transition into everyone's favorite part of the show, our final roars. Kyle, the floor is yours.
In what's been a disappointing year for the Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team, Grant Pecknold may have sparked some life into the Bobcats. Since Scott Davidson and John Fergelli were elected assistant captains by their teammates, the Bobcats have only lost 3 of their last 8 games. The move to reward 2 leaders stresses the importance of what Quinnipiac hockey is all about. Pecknold called Davidson and Fergelli great character guys, hard workers, and a good presence in the locker room. Those are just the qualities Quinnipiac will need if they want a shot in the postseason.
The women's basketball team is at it again. Despite losing their leading scorer in Sarah Schuin and full-time starting guard Vanessa Adoji to season-ending injuries, the Bobcats have won 12 straight wins as they continue to steamroll all MAC opponents. Each blowout win brings head coach Trisha Fabry 1 game closer to win number 400 as she currently stands at 396. The upcoming milestone offers a time of reflection for the winningest coach in program history and how far Fabry has taken this team. No matter who is on the floor, Fabry still produces a winner. She lost 5 senior starters in the 2015-2016 season and still managed to win 29 games and the MAC Coach of the Year award. Now here she is again, bringing her Bobcats closer to another NCAA tournament berth despite catching the injury bug. Whether it be bobbleheads or trophies, the community has taken notice. But win number 400 would provide a time to ask the bigger question. Is Trisha Fabry the greatest coach this school has ever seen? I don't have a bobblehead on me, but it's probably shaking yes somewhere.
All right, it's been a bit of a bumpy season for the Quinnipiac men's and women's hockey teams this year, but that hasn't stopped some Bobcat alumni from making waves in the professional rankings. Over in the NHL, Matthew Pekka got the call to join the Tampa Bay Lightning this past week, and he's impressed early with the Lightning, the top seed in the East, and banged up with injuries. The chance is there for Pekka to stick with the big club. Over to women's hockey, former Bobcats Kelly Babstock and Sydney Rossman were selected to the National Women's Hockey League All-Star Game. The members of the Connecticut Whale also recruited 1 more Bobcat to their team in defenseman Emma Greco, who will join the Whale next season. And finally, there's just no bigger stage than the Olympics. And for the third straight rendition of the Games, former QU forward Erika Udin Johansson will be representing her native Sweden. You can be sure that all of Bobcat Nation will be watching these alumni intently. And with that, we've reached the end of another episode of Bobcat Breakdown. Join us again next Tuesday at 9:30, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Q30Sports and at QBSN. Visit our websites at Q30TV.com and VQBSN.com to see all of our content. For Kyle Lavasser and Ryan Chichester, I'm Tom Krasnowski, signing off on Bobcat Breakdown. We'll see you next week.